Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor Masterclass. This is a platform where we learn from the best. These individuals are trailblazers and change makers whose leadership and entrepreneurship provides teaching moments and inspiration. We will learn from their journeys, from their stories of success and failure. The Institute of Chartered Accountants is celebrating its centenary, and we will be learning from a select group from this body whose journeys embodies the ethos of the profession. Joining us today is Tumai Mafunga, Group Treasurer of Delta Corporation and current President of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. Enjoy this masterclass.
I'm Tumai Mafunga, and this is my masterclass. So the major highlights for me have been quite a few. The first being the opportunity to join Deloitte & Touche and doing my articles with Deloitte & Touche, as well as becoming a partner in the firm at a very young age. I think what it did is it gave me an opportunity, one, to get access to multiple industries. And in that way, I identified what excited me, as well as gave me an opportunity to build a network over a considerable amount of time. And the exposure, because of the Deloitte network in itself, was not only just a Zimbabwean exposure, it was an exposure across Africa and also across the world. I decided to do accounting because I remember back when I was at Fletcher, which is where I did my Form 1 to Form 4. I used to understand our accounting teacher well, and it came to me naturally. And I also enjoyed numbers. I was good with maths, but just the way that it almost felt like it was a conversation of business. That's what accounting is to me. It defines, or it tells a story about the business that is at play. So for me, the passion with numbers and also the interpretation that came with that was what I really, really enjoyed. I did my articles with Deloitte, and as I went through the journey, there were many lessons that came from that particular process. Firstly, you go into this environment and you are young, and the next day you are either sitting at large established institutions such as Econet, such as Delta, such as FBC, supposedly querying people who obviously have run the mile in terms of their acumen and what is there. What I learned along the journey was, one, the ability to work. It doesn't matter how old you are or what experiences you've been through. There's always an opportunity to learn. It's quite important to talk to that. And then also, when you think about it, there is teamwork that comes with how you particularly do your work. What I find is when you go out there, you're dealing with multiple people. You go through there as teams, and you're dealing with people of different personalities, different backgrounds. So some of the lessons are purely in understanding how you deal with different people coming from those different backgrounds, and also understanding why business decisions are being made in the way they are being made. Being a partner is it's almost like you are part of the owners of the business. And when you look at some of these professional services firms, you are taking the lead in terms of whatever opinions or corporate finance work or taxation work that you are doing at any specific client. Now, as a partner, one, you lead the direction of the business in terms of where you're going. You are the one who's accountable to the different clients that you are working with. And you are also responsible for implementing the strategy of the business. Naturally, there are a couple of you, so you do own the business and you participate in the profit share. But you are effectively like a part owner of this business, leading it from the front. I mean, I got into partnership at the age of 27, and it was not always easy, because in reality, at that time, we lived in a society which was very age driven in terms of capability. So there's an expectation that someone who's a partner has to have been this sort of like age. So that came with its own challenges along the way. But I think it's about your own self-confidence and also the people who supported me in terms of our own internal structure, who gave me the confidence to be able to express, who I was. So it's quite important that in any situation that you find yourself, that you have an attitude that allows you to learn and to have support structures in terms of the system. I think, to be fair, I had a lot of supportive partners who had gone before me who gave me this opportunity. To name a few, Tawanda Gumbo, who's now the financial director of CBZ, a former partner who's now in Australia called You Right, Brian Mabiza, just to name a few. But in doing that, what was quite critical was that I demonstrated in myself the value that I would be delivering. And value is about understanding the needs of your stakeholders, from both internally as Deloitte as well externally in terms of the clients. So I remember what I used to do if, for example, I was going to meet Mr. Mboweni at Econet, I would spend the whole day studying what is happening in the telecommunications environment, what are the pain points, what within the Deloitte network can actually respond to some of their needs. So you can't just sit there and be ordinary. This particular profession is beyond just being an accountant. It's actually about understanding what the numbers mean and what matters to your clients on an ongoing basis. So the key achievements for the Institute of Chartered Accountants has been many. One, we have remained relevant over a period of 104 years. In reality, there are a lot of other institutions that were there when this institute started. Institutions such as, Zisco, hopefully it will be able to come to the fore, David Whitehead. So I think one of the major things is the ability to transform with each environment. We've also increased the number of chartered accountants over the years who are female. It's not something that we are proud of, but I personally believe that the Institute has got to be defined by the demographics of the country, and it's a journey where we believe we'll be able to achieve. But I think the greatest one for me is the ability to create world-class chartered accountants. 50% of our chartered accountants are outside the country. Some of them are financial directors of Fortune 500 companies. And that's big. It is absolutely big. It means that the individual that we make here in Zimbabwe, despite the challenges, is able to measure up at an international level. And that, for me, I think is a major milestone in terms of being relevant, not just locally, but also at an international level. ICAS has recognized that our job is to create leaders. And I think as chartered accountants, we've got an obligation, to influence not just private sector, but also public sector. So at the moment, we've gone into serious conversations with government where we are looking at professionalizing institutions within government. There are currently 11 graduates that are there, and we intend on increasing that number on an ongoing basis. We are also looking at becoming, participating a bit more, even in terms of the public sector, because one of the key things associated with chartered accountants is the aspect of integrity. The fabric within the country, both in private and public sector, has left a lot to be desired. And we believe that our presence and influence will go a long way in creating accountability in both private and public sector. As group treasurer at Delta is a huge institution. It's really, really significant. And I think it's about understanding in that position how one manages the cash flows, identifies opportunities for acquisition, and not just locally, but also within the region with the help of the key executives, being the CEO and the financial director. and also ensuring that the financial matrix of that institution is up to par. I think when you sit in that role, your touch point is across the whole business. It could be procurement, it could be finance, it could be anything, because money will be moving at any given point in time. So one has to understand the business to understand whether it's also meeting the strategic initiatives in a manner that is effective from a cash flow perspective. One of the major issues in the country right now is the issue of the exchange rate. And that has created a lot of headaches for chartered accountants or members of our profession. In fact, it's something that I spoke to in our more recent publication. And I think there is a disconnect between the reality of what the exchange rate should be and what is actually legislated as the exchange rate. And that makes accounting for things extremely difficult, because as accountants, what we are always focused on is what is the substance. We do believe that continuous dialogue is required with government. I think there is a need to look at expenditure that is happening within government and identify what are the major things that are driving the exchange rate. And it's both on the part of private sector and public sector to be able to reconcile in terms of those specific positions. So I do sympathize with a lot of members who are part of the profession, because in reality, any attempt in certain cases to try and comply may actually result in an economic failure on the part of the business. And that, for me, I think is the biggest elephant of the room, and we need to be calling a spade and dealing with that quite directly. On a day-to-day basis, I think what we are realizing in terms of the economy is that a lot of institutions are pushing towards dollarization, because that then takes away the volatility and losses that are attributable to the Zimbabwe dollar. But we do believe that there is a significant benefit in still maintaining a local currency for the purposes of creating demand on a progressive basis. So I think for a lot of us, we are constantly worried about whether we are able to replace that which we have at a point in time. And so pricing becomes important. Access to foreign currency becomes very, very important, as well as looking at your supply chain partners becomes very, very important. And those are the things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. The auction system helped, and I use the word helped because I'm talking of past tense. I think it is not as effective as it was or in the beginning. I think there are things that can be done to that auction system to ensure that it becomes more efficient and is reflective of what is happening in the market. And let me dig in a little bit there. In reality, what has happened is the auction system has created inefficiencies, where you find that people are more interested in acquiring foreign currency on the auction as opposed to making the businesses more efficient. And that arbitrage is what is really creating challenges in the local market. And it's really purely a supply and demand issue. So if you look at some of the mining institutions, yes, there is a need to liquidate, but you say to yourself, when you liquidate 40% of someone's revenue, what are they going to do with the Zimbabwe dollar when they are mainly within a foreign, dominated type market? So I think there is a need to go back to the drawing table and ask ourselves what is effective. Do I believe, but let me qualify that, do I believe that the parallel market is a good indicator of where the value is? No. I don't think it is, but I also feel that that is an indication of the lack of confidence, because all of us have lost value, and people will act in a manner that defends their own economic position. So leadership requires someone who is willing to be a servant to the people that you work with. It also requires someone who is willing to continuously learn. And learning is both from superiors and from juniors, because you can't be, a stream of knowledge on your own. And also a leader has to be what I have personally defined in my journey as progressively disruptive. Comfort is what really destroyed the ability to grow. And so you've got to identify opportunities that say, how do I continuously disrupt myself to grow? And that disruption is both at a personal and at a professional level. Your network, your people, the people you spend your time with, do they push you? Do they challenge you to become better? Professionally, what are you doing to learn something new? And I think the combination of that and the desire to continuously learn, provide guidance, and the desire also to be vulnerable, because you can't be a continuously perfect leader, is what makes you better at leading. You serve and you lead. I think that is, for me, what I would call critical. How do I lead myself? I tend to be very hard on myself. And maybe hard is not the word, but I tend to reflect a lot in trying to measure whether there has been growth in me as a person, physically, spiritually, professionally. And if I find that there is an area that's lacking, I push and make corrective steps towards that. I'm also big on mentors. Mentors are important. It doesn't matter where you are in life, and it's mentors across the divide, because I think in a lot of cases we focus purely on professional mentors. For those who are married, it's important to have a mentor in the institution of marriage. For those who are in their professional journey, it's important. I used to say to guys at Deloitte, the guys I used to mentor, that if being a CA, it's prestigious. It's a good position. But if you throw a stone within Deloitte, you'll hit a CA. So it's not in that environment. It's not something that is completely out of this world. So I think when I look at that, those are the things that I would consider and look at. Managing stress and frustration with this profession requires continuously changing your attitude. So I used to be someone who was impatient, very demanding, and also extremely domineering. In other words, to put it bluntly, I wanted things my way. But what I've learned with life is that, take a time to breathe. Breathe. It's important. Just breathe. Take time to reflect. At a personal level, I spend a lot of time with family. I try to travel. I like Zim Dancehall. I absolutely love Zim Dancehall. I'm a big fan of Winky D. Magafa Murikwere, So it's my way of distressing and being able to relax and allow myself to be human again. failure is such an important aspect of life. I remember my first experience when I was in third year at Deloitte, because I was doing my degree with UNISA, and the results came out, and I hadn't really experienced failure before, and the results came out, and boom, I had not obtained my degree. It was devastating. But what I realized is it made me refocus, because failure reminds you to constantly put effort in the things that you do. Because continuous success, in most cases, results in you being a bit comfortable. And as I look at it now, well, that was not the last time I failed. I even failed my board one on first attempt. But when I look at it, I still made partner at 27. I still was on the exco of TMT for Deloitte. I still became head of audit. I still became president of the institute. So I think that journey allowed me to reflect, reorganize myself, and like I say, progressively disrupt myself in a way that would put me in the positions that I find myself in now. Managing a crisis requires that one has a level head, because panicking within a crisis rarely results in any solutions. I'm a big believer in consultation. I'm also a big believer in understanding the problem and separating between what you are in control of and what you are not in control of. And somewhere in between there, you are then able to path a way which allows you to respond to the situation that you are in. There are certain situations you're just not going to be able to control. And with those, it's important that you engage and also allow yourself to forgive yourself in situations where a crisis has occurred. COVID was one of the most disruptive things I've ever experienced. What it taught me as a leader, though, is you need, even if you are not physically available, you need to be mentally available for the people that are around you. You know, these mental health issues are real. And that presence is in ensuring that when you call or when you engage with people, before you demand work or you demand everything else, take time to understand what they are going through and be deliberate about, taking time out, particularly with people. When you are communicating via the phone or via computer or chat box, it can be very, very impersonal. But what I found is that the moment I would take a pause and say, hey, how are you doing? How's the family? Then, people would really pour out. And just the fact that you genuinely care, and I'm not saying ticking a box, you genuinely care for people, I think allowed us to go through this very difficult moment, because there's something about personal touch which a computer does not deliver. And so that requires that, your voice projects that contact in recognizing that you're dealing with people. So I'm a big believer in giving, and giving, across the divide. So at a personal level, in as far as mentorship is concerned, I try and go out there and spend time, particularly with, people regardless of background, regardless of where they've come from. There are one or two situations where I have taken the deliberate action of identifying individuals and personally going out to have a conversation with them, particularly about the profession, and then saying, okay, listen, this is what is available. And what does mentorship mean to me? Mentorship is really about connecting and identifying the strengths and also the areas of development of the individual, and being able to provide them with a guiding light, but not necessarily giving them the direction of where they are supposed to go. It's quite important that someone defines their own path as a mentor, because in certain cases you want to impose your own personal journey. And people love talking about themselves. They absolutely love talking about themselves. So it's important to take a pause to understand your audience and who you are dealing with. On the reverse side, in dealing with your own mentors, allow for a point of vulnerability and respect always, because there comes a point where you have also come, it's possible to outgrow your mentor because of your own personal circumstances. And it's important to then redefine that specific relationship, but also allow your mentor to be comfortable enough to critique you, to question you, and to call you out in situations that require specific growth. So I think the key word around mentorship is vulnerability, and a level of vulnerability that allows for honest conversation without imposing your own pathway on that person's life. My advice to young people who want to get into the profession is follow your passion. I totally understand, because I've spoken to a lot of you, how tough this economy is, and in most cases there's a driving force that pushes you to say, listen, I want to leave. But there are also a lot of lessons that can come from experience within Zimbabwe that teaches you resilience, that teaches you the ability to operate in what I call VUCA environments, literally, and that teaches you to sustain and exist in tough environments. I'm not saying that surviving in a tough environment is what one should desire, but regardless of where you then go around the world, there's a reason why we have 50% of our members being outside the country. So for those who want to come in, understand that it's not going to be easy. Understand that though we are chartered accountants, we are not necessarily just in the business of making accountants. We're in the business of developing individuals with business acumen who are able to challenge and provide advice, because everything boils down to numbers. That's what it does. Whether in mining, it's answered in numbers. Whether in media, it's answered eventually in numbers. Is this making some form of sustainable impact from a profitable perspective and from a community perspective? So I think it's important that when you are in this environment, that you focus on the goal, regardless of the circumstances you find yourself in. I do have role models. My mom and dad are definitely my role models. Dad is a bit tough, or is a bit softer now, but they are my role models because of their background and their ability to have gone to where they are now in life and creating an opportunity for me and my siblings. And then also, people like Mats Valela, who's the current CEO of Delta. People like Strive Masiwa, Douglas Mboweni, are people that I look up to in terms of the journeys that they have walked, and I've been inspired by my wife as well. She started off as an economist, but she's now a lawyer. So whatever you put your mind in, you should be able to do it. And her story is one that demonstrates that. Sports has taught me, in as far as leadership is concerned, has taught me about teamwork. Because in most of the activities, you are operating as a team, and it's important to strengthen each other when you're a team. It's also taught me about what it means to walk through failure, especially where you lose. Because it's not the end of the world. It's okay for you to cry, but it's okay for you to stand up and also move forward. It's also taught me about silent leadership. Sport is like, especially with basketball, it's like a continuous moving part. If one person fails to move, the whole ecosystem fails. So I think that's what sport has taught me in as far as, leadership principles along the way. I volunteered as treasurer of the Mayor's Cheer Fund when Much Masunda was mayor, and we're also working with his late wife, Fikile. And for me, it was a way of contributing back in as far as the public sector is concerned. And coming out of the firm as a partner, I felt that my presence there provided or assisted in bringing credibility to that particular fundraising effort. I don't quite remember the numbers, but it must have been in excess of $1 million US that was raised during that time. And obviously, Much is a well-respected individual in as far as business is concerned. And I felt it was important to support him in that particular process. And also to, like I'd said earlier on, that for me, making an impact in communities is important, and that gave me an opportunity to make an impact in the community during that period. Reading is such an important aspect of life because you don't know what you don't know. And over the years, I've read quite a few books. In the more recent past, the 5 a.m. Club, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, The Richest Man in Babylon, the Bible, very important for me. It's an important aspect because what it does is it provokes thought and widens your thinking in terms of things that you may not have necessarily considered. So whether it's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, whether it's the Mastering Masterclass, whether it's trying to be a better man or a better individual, it is such an important aspect of one's life to continuously disrupt yourself, as I had indicated.
That was an instructive masterclass from Tumai Mafunga. My key takeaways were the following: that you are never too old to learn, that it's important to continuously disrupt the way you do things, disrupt yourself, that it's important to be level-headed during a crisis, that mentorship is important, and that vulnerability helps the mentorship process. I hope you enjoyed this masterclass. If you did, please subscribe, share, like. Until next time, cheers to you all.